Welcome to the Dunamis EQ Podcast, where we talk to leaders who lead with great emotional intelligence. We learn from their stories and we grow from their stories. Today, I have the honor and the pleasure of being joined by Carla. Carla, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Tolo.
My absolute pleasure. So Carla was introduced to me by Deanne, who I work with at Sky. And Carla is currently the managing director of Stagecoach. Stagecoach is actually something I used to take to school like every day. So I'm very intrigued to talk to you a bit more about it. Yeah. So would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey to kind of where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So at the minute, I look after Stagecoach. So Stagecoach, I take care of about 24,000 people all across the country, working out of around 100 depots, bus garages, whatever you call them. And I've been here for about 3 years. And I always think the journey at Stagecoach has been crazy because I joined 3 weeks before the very first lockdown. So I always say I'm only just getting to learn what the bus industry really is all about, because we've spent the last 3 years working very, very closely with local government to get our bus business back on the road, and then B, trying to get people to get back on board. So we can talk a bit about that later on. And then prior to Stagecoach, I did about 8 years at Sky, looking after initially the retail team. So Sky Stores, Sky Events and Sky Walkers at the time. And then I moved across to look after the fantastic engineers at Sky. So that wonderful group of people that are out interacting with customers in their homes every single day of the week. And I had a fantastic time at Sky. I chose to leave Sky really to move to Stagecoach to broaden. Sky is very much a matrix operating model, and I wanted to find myself in an environment where I had full P&L control of the budget. So I'm managing about £1.3 billion at the minute. And it's been very, very good at broadening me out and just helping me develop those commercial skills that I wanted on top of the other skills that I've already got. And then prior to Sky, I was in an agency world, so launching new brands and helping increase sales of existing brands across broadly technology, so Microsoft, Cisco, Intel, those kind of brands that you'd find on sale in the high street, but just didn't have their own sales teams out there doing the work for them. So I'd work with those brands to raise awareness, increase sales, and educate customers on what products could do for them.
It sounds like you've had a very varied career. Was that something you've always known you wanted to do, or how did you kind of get to that place?
Well, couple all of that. If you go right back to the beginning, I started life as a dental nurse in a dental center.
What do you mean? Right?
So when you say varied, you're not wrong. So I started at working at a very local dental surgery. And Tolu, I was at 17 years old, I found myself pregnant with my eldest son, Sean. So very quickly had to leave school, had very, very supportive parents who said, this is not the beginning of the end, or this is not ideally where we wanted to be, but this is not a bad thing. But what you will do is you will go to work and you will, work hard, and you will provide for your child. So we'll give you all of the other support that you need, but you will provide financially for your child. And there's nothing like your dad telling you that to make you think, I really need to step things up. So I'd been working in the dental surgery, and the dental surgery had been selling dental insurance plans. And had asked me to lead on that. And I found I could do it relatively well. And my sister at the time was working for a company called BT Mobile, and it was right at the launch of the mobile world, if you like, and came to me and said, look, they're looking for people. You should give it a go. You can sell, come and work for what was called Cellnet back then, which is where I met Deanne.
Right. Okay.
So I went across to work for Cellnet, worked across a number of divisions at Cellnet. I found myself always in the divisions that nobody else really wanted to work in. So debt collection, complaints, always the departments that nobody else wanted to work in. But do you know what I find? People are people. And as long as you treat people with respect And as long as you try and walk in their shoes, actually, you can help find solutions to problems that they're having, and you can do it with dignity and respect. And therefore, I found that work quite easy to do. And then I decided to make the move. I was living in Yorkshire at the time, and I decided I wanted to make the move. I'd been in work since I was 17. Sean, my oldest son now, was 6 years old, and I decided to just tell my parents, look, I want to see a little bit of the world, so I'm going to London. And off I went to London, and I'd been working at the Leeds division of Cellnet, and actually just managed to get an internal role down at Cellnet in Slough. So I went to Cellnet in Slough, and that's where I met Deanne, who was my trainer at the time.
Wow.
And I'm very much of the view that our success is never created by ourselves. All along the way, you can find people that have invested in you, people that believed in you, people that were willing to give you their time, people that believe that we're better together. And Deanne was one of those people. So I remember coming in, and every meeting or in every environment that we were in together, she'd say, maybe try to think about doing it a little bit like this way, or, celebrate, don't worry about your Yorkshire accent, celebrate your individuality. You don't need to talk like these people, just be yourself. And so she was a phenomenal support to me way back then, just helping me learn how to acclimatise moving from Yorkshire to London.
It's a very big shift. It's a very big shift.
You know what? It was a really big shift. And, one of the things I was always cognizant of was that, the department that I walked into at Cellnet, the people that worked there were all very privileged. And here'd come me, from Yorkshire with the, back then, this was 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, with the reputation that, Yorkshire people have down south. I think, I'd come in, I was a single mother. And it was tough, it was tough. So finding your people in this new environment that you're in, you had to really focus on to be able to get through the days, and I was very, very lucky. I found my people down there, and they were people that, still to this day, I know that if I ever needed to call on the support and any support from them, would be there for me. And that's phenomenal, to think that I've got all of these people, this community around me that, even when you're having a tough day at work, if you remember that you've got this huge community, and it's a community I've brought from all over. I mean, I'm still really good friends with the other dental nurse that worked at the dental surgery where we worked in Leeds, right the way through to the friends I'm making here at Stagecoach. It's phenomenal because you're just creating this huge community that are shaping you and interacting with you and giving you, their perspective on the world. And ultimately, it makes you a better leader because whether it's intentional or accidental, you've got this huge network of people around you that don't realize it, but they're helping you every day when you make those decisions that you need to make.
And what's amazing for me is it's such a brave thing to do, especially like you said back then. That was when like mobile phones and things like that were just starting. So, what now I can do where I can message my friends from my year abroad and stuff like that so easily, like you can do that. So it's amazing that you were able to firstly even just go, leave where you're from, go to the big city, like go do all of that. But then that you've also been able to keep all of those people along your journey over the years. It's really easy to lose touch.
It's, you know what, Tolu, that's what I'd say. It's really easy to get caught up in the busyness of the life that you're living at the moment. And actually one of the things that and when you work full time, like I work, and you've got family, I care for my parents, I've got my own family to care for as well. It's very easy to think that you don't have time for your community, but actually it's really important for me that I make time for that community so that when I have more time, I can give it. Going back to the old Cellnet days, if Deanne hasn't told you, when we all look back at mobiles now, the one thing that we always remember was the first time we sent a text message to one another. So we'd be sat in the office trying to work out how to say what we wanted to say in 160 characters, and it was, they were great times. They were great times just watching, where mobile is now versus where, playing Snake on our 8110s and, speaking in code. We've come so far, and actually the industry was in this kind of space where really you only knew what each other was doing anyway. It wasn't something you could, you'd say to people externally, what do you do? Well, I work in mobile phones. What's that? What do you mean? What do you do? Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? People were walking around with rabbit handsets and, business people had Motorola bag phones, and that was about as cool as it got. And the minute we started to put Nokia 2110s into people's hands, it was...
It's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. Like, I can still remember I was probably like 12, I think, when I got my first mobile phone. And that was like 20 years ago. Yeah, it was like 20 years ago that I got and I still remember it. Like you said, I'm just trying to remember, who did I text? I can't even remember who I texted.
Oh, see what I mean? Remember. I texted Deanne. This is
really?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. This is what you did. You were just sat in the office. You'd text it. You think it was great. Texting each other. We couldn't do anything else on that phone. Make a call, send a text, or play Snake. We thought you couldn't use it abroad. You couldn't. I mean, we'd get excited about things like call waiting launching and things, Listen, they were great days. Wow. Great days.
It's absolutely amazing. One of the things that I wanted to ask you actually is, what are some tips that you have for keeping in touch with your network and making time for your network? Because it seems like it's something that you're really, really good at.
Well, hey, look, doesn't technology make this so easy? It really does, and I think, it's the obvious stuff. Get those WhatsApp groups going, don't expect there to always be an interaction on it. But if you see something, post it, don't look for a response back. Some people are busy. Some people have, got other things on their mind. So I make a point of making sure that we keep connected on social media. I'm not a Facebook person or a Twitter person, really. But I do try and stay connected on other social media platforms and make sure I'm checking in. I take time, so I'm back living in Yorkshire now. I go see my friends. It's really important for us to see one another. And actually, that community that was then is a very different community now because, so my oldest is 33 now, but I have a younger son as well who's 12. And what's wonderful is that community of mine, our children are friends now. So we make a point of, wherever we are in the country, turning up to one another's birthday parties or, making sure there's a quarterly meet where we all get together. I think it's really important just to put the effort into keeping in contact.
I love what you said about your expectation on responses, because I feel like as technology has advanced and we have more and more instant access to people, I feel like you have this expectation that people should not only reply, but reply really quickly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I think it's just so much pressure, and I think it ruins a lot of friendships. But I love what you said about, look, have the expectation that I'm putting my message out there. People might see it, they might not respond, but they'll also remember that you actually reached out, you put your stuff out there.
Correct.
And it makes things a bit easier. Like you said, when you then jump back into those friendships, when you have more time, you've still got some of those kind of touch points along the way. So I really liked what you said. I really like that.
Cool.
What does emotional intelligence mean to you?
Look, emotional intelligence for me is absolutely being tuned into what is going on around you. It's listening, actively listening to what people are saying. It's about taking in what people are saying. It's about trying to understand their point of view rather than, I see an awful lot of, certainly in a leadership role. Look, I can be in lots of meetings and I can see somebody say something and I can see other people. And at that point, they've stopped listening, right? Because they're just dying to say what they want to say. And people don't realize that the minute you start focusing on what you want to say, you've stopped hearing the person that's talking. For me, EQ is just all about allowing people to be themselves, creating an environment for people to be authentic, creating an environment for people to be heard. I had I read this really great article the other day. It was about the difference between introverts, extroverts, and ambiverts. And ambivert was a new word for me. So I've always thought about intros and extras, but I hadn't thought about the ambiverts that are out there. And isn't that a tough environment to be in? Those that have got that equal balance of introversion and extroversion. So I think it's just tuning into being present, being there in the moment, whatever the interaction is that you're having, be there, wholeheartedly be there, and allow the person the opportunity to say or do whatever it is they need to say or do. That's EQ for me.
I really like that. And is there an early memory, or like, do you have an early consciousness of EQ? Like, what's the first moment that you might think of when you think, okay, this is where I need to start learning about EQ? Was there a moment for you?
I'm going to be really honest and say I wasn't really tuned into EQ until a gentleman called Martin Newman came to Sky and took us away on a course where we actually learned what EQ was. And what was really interesting is I always go back to something that somebody said, which is when I realized I am emotionally intelligent. And somebody said, do you know the problem with you, Carla? The problem with you is you wear your heart on your sleeve. And at the time, it was meant as toughen up, stop being quite so open. You don't need to, don't worry about things, so if things are not going right, don't worry about it, and certainly don't tell anybody. And that was when I realized, after I'd gone into this course with Martin, it's when I realized, gosh, I have got that, I have got emotional intelligence. And I've always been, my mum always said to me growing up, people are going to walk all over you. Stop being so nice to people, because she worried because that's what I'm, I'm very much, I think I'm quite a giving person. And I think as long as you can do that without expectation.
Yes.
Right.
That's huge. That's so true.
That's EQ. If you can give without expectation, then you are your whole self. And I think it's really important for me that's who I am.
And you said something before we were recording about how, you're a certain way, and most of the time that works out okay. There are going to be times where, people take advantage and different things like that. But it really resonated with me because I think in the past people have said to me, like, I'm quite naive because I trust. If I meet you, I give you my trust straight away, right?
Same.
Because I'd rather live my life like giving you my trust. And most people do amazing things with it, absolutely amazing things because they know that you trust them. There are absolutely going to be people that will try and take advantage. But I think it's so important that, like you said, you can just be your authentic self and just be free. I'm not always looking for how are people going to screw me over? How is this going to go wrong? Like, I can just be free. And most times it works out really well, like you said.
Look, I would need my hands and my toes to count the opportunities that I would have missed if I had, not been so naive. Or the losers in that, if you allow yourself to be bruised by an interaction that didn't quite go the way that you wanted it to go, and for it to then stop you ever putting yourself in that position again, Tolu, you lose. You lose. In a year, I can count on my hands and toes the experiences I've had as a result of just being open to whatever's in front of me.
Could you give an example?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't have. I chair a wonderful network called the Women of Irish Heritage. And it's a network for people like myself who are of Irish heritage, working over here in the UK. And it's a space where women can support women in a safe environment that's not stuffy, that isn't. We don't want to talk about quantitative easing and African politics all the time, right?
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes we just want to talk about a tough day that we're having at work, or we want a little bit of help in understanding, I don't know, what the budget implications mean for me as a woman, and I wouldn't, if I had not sat down with the charity that wanted to set up this group, and I was busy, Tolu, right? I'd got a new job. I was new into Stagecoach. I joined Stagecoach 3 weeks before the pandemic. Life was really difficult. I didn't know the people, didn't know them at all. So it wasn't a recommendation from a friend. But do you know what I thought? I thought, it's women, it's Irish heritage. Let me go and have a chat and see what it is. And we've now got this phenomenal network of over 350 women that come together every quarter. We share ideas, we learn, we talk, we raise money for charity, and I feel like we were on a walk recently in Manchester, a walk for women in Manchester. And that walk for women just made me realize how much work we've still got to do. This is not, gender balance isn't there yet, right? We've still got work to do. But again, it just introduced me to a whole new community of people that I would never have met if I hadn't accepted that role as chair of the Women of Irish Heritage Network.
And do you think that emotional intelligence kind of helps you to be able to better process some of those situations to lead to those better outcomes? Or do you think that's something that's slightly different?
I think you're right. I think emotional intelligence does help you better process those times, because what you try and do is you put yourself in the shoes of the people that A, are asking you to do it, that B, you're going to be on the receiving end of the support that you provide. So that's the charity. We're going to be on the receiving end of the support you provide. The women that want to be in the network and why they might want to be in the network, then it's really easy, because suddenly what you find is commonality. For me, across those three reasons for doing this, I found something I had in common with everybody in each of those groups. Then do you know what? I'm back to my community again.
I think that's so true. Because I feel like sometimes, especially in this, we live in quite a polarized world, it feels like. And I think that actually being able to assess and understand and hear people, it helps you to find that common ground, as opposed to finding the differences, because those common grounds pull us together, they help us, and the differences just pull us apart. So I think emotional intelligence can be really important in knowing how to find common ground.
Yeah. And, leadership, I say this all the time, leadership's a privilege. It's not a job, it's a privilege that is given to you. And I was talking to somebody recently, you shouldn't do it if you cannot do it. It's not something that intrinsically you should want to do it, and you should want to do it really well. Leaders are not created in isolation, though. Leaders need guidance, they need mentorship, they need support, they need encouragement, and all of this comes from the community of people around you. I always think, I would not be the leader that I am if I wasn't open to this huge community of people that are around me, giving me their ideas and sharing, helping me work through these complex challenges that leadership brings, because it does,
It does.
There's no predictability in people leadership. It's not an Intel chip in a HP laptop. It's not that, right? It pivots and turns and changes according to everything else that's going on around it. And so for me, having that supportive community that provides resource and connections for me to be able to do my job really well, I think is what makes me the leader that I am. And I think that would be my advice that I would give to emerging leaders is, surround yourself with diverse perspectives, surround yourself with, these people don't all have to be your friends. Surround yourself with people that can help you get where you're going.
So do you believe that leaders are born or made?
I think you can be made. Did I think when I was 17 years old that I was going to be a leader of tens of thousands of people? No, I didn't. But I think you've got to be open to it. I think you've got to be. One of the things that I love is continuously learning new things. I'm always reading books, I'm always looking for that external viewpoint on what's going on. And somebody said to me recently, actually, stop reading books. You don't need books anymore. And you're kind of like, no,
what?
I will never stop reading books, because even if you take a line from a 300-page book, all it's doing is improving you. That's what it's doing.
It's so true. I think, because I've been thinking about this question about are leaders born or made, and I think it's, to be honest, it's both, because I think that there are people who definitely have like leadership ability and tendencies and things like that, but I think that it's like talent. It's kind of raw. You know, if you don't have the right shaping, the right coaching, the right teaching around it, it can actually be quite dangerous, I think.
And you know, and a leader of, you know, so when I was younger, the definition of a leader was not the definition of a leader now. You know, it's, as I said to you, you know, the problem with you is you wear your heart on your sleeve. The problem with you is you're not tough enough with them. You know, the problem with you is you trust them to, you know, it's changed. And, you know, I remember speaking to the group HRD at Sky many years ago. And she said to me, you know, Carla, the quicker businesses recognize that it needs a blend of EQ, IQ, CQ to be able to...
What's CQ, sorry?
Cultural intelligence.
Okay, I've not heard that before.
Right, okay. So cultural intelligence, this isn't the what, it isn't the why, it's the how. And, you know, culture is what brings all of that together. And, you know, Deborah was right. She said, you know, many, many times organizations focus on, you know, what degree you've got, what university you've come from. I remember someone once saying to me, if I had known that you didn't have a degree, I would never have given you this job.
Really?
Somebody said that to me once, yeah. If I had known that you didn't have a degree, you wouldn't have got this job. And what Deborah was saying to me was, goodness me, Carla, you know, we need the theorists and we need the ideators and we need the innovators and we need all this brain up here ticking away. But ultimately down here, we need the grunt that gets it done. We need the people that can tune into how we make it happen and how we tell the story, you know, and how we take people on the journey with us. And she was absolutely spot on, Tolu, when she said that to me.
It's so interesting, you know, what you said about how all the things that before would have made you like a bad leader, in quotes, are now the exact things that we need, because we do need people that trust people. You know, that's like a key driver of, you know, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Like trust is like the bottom thing. You know, that's like the basis for everything. So it's amazing. And it's, to be honest, it's a really good journey that we're going on as a nation or as a society, that those things are becoming actually really important. You know, we're recognizing those things, because I think before they were always important, but we kind of didn't really pay attention to it.
No.
It feels like, you know, so it's good that those things are coming to the forefront. What was your... Yeah, go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and you know, the other thing that we talk a lot about is, and I always worry when we talk about EQ, that people think EQ equals empathy. Right, and EQ does equal empathy, but it equals all of the other stuff that sits around it as well, doesn't it? You know, the active listening that we talked about, conflict management, you know, being able to be that honest broker when things are going wrong, you know, being able to help people understand other people's perspectives. That's what EQ is. That's what EQ is, you know, providing that visionary kind of leadership that emotionally connects with the people that you're surrounding yourself with. That's what that looks like.
It's so true. It's so true. What was your first leadership experience? When did you start leading people?
Oh gosh. So the first role that I took when I went to Cellnet, what is now O2, I joined a team of 4 plus me. And I'd gone in as a member of the team, but you know what it is, Tolo? I had really different reasons for going to work, right? I had a mouth to feed at home, you know. Yes. I had a point to prove to my parents who, whilst they'd never said were disappointed, I'm pretty sure were, or I was sure back then that they were. So I had a point to prove. So I wasn't going to work to earn some money to go out into London on a weekend. That's not what I was doing. I was going to work to earn money. And so right from the get-go, when I walked in there, you know, what I looked for were the influences in that organization that I could learn from. And so I joined in the May And by the October, I was then the team leader for that team. So we'd gone
That's really quick.
Yeah. But it was, I was the one that was staying late. I didn't have to get out early on a Friday, and also I didn't have anything in common with the people that I was working with. Actually, what I'd done over the 6 months was try and learn something about all of them. And I think that Jilly Love, who'd been my boss at the time then, had recognized that. And again, it's emotional intelligence, but without the label, isn't it? Because what I was trying to do was, in my own way, settle in. And therefore, what I knew was to settle in, I needed to be interested in these people. And I needed to learn things about them. And so that's what I was doing, asking lots of questions, allowing them to laugh at me, but ultimately demonstrating leadership qualities. And Jilly recognized that and came to me and said, how would you feel about managing the team now? And do you remember when we were talking off camera, I said, so that was a retail sales team. And I'd been doing that for about 18 months. And somebody came up to me and said, listen, we need somebody to lead the technology support desk for O2. And I said, I don't know anything about technology. I don't even know. Well, as you know, I don't even know how to turn my sound up on my laptop. But I said, I don't even know anything about technology. They said, you don't need to know anything about technology, Carla. You just need to know how to lead. And I went into the technology support team. I didn't have a clue, Tolu. They were coming up to me saying, Carla, please, can you help us? We've got a P0 complaint raised on this, platform. It was, they may as well have been speaking, the most foreign language that I can think of to me. But actually, what I did know was I knew who would be able to help. And it goes right back to community again, because at the time I thought, I don't know the answer to this, but Dean will be able to give me the answer to this. And I was able to pick up the phone to Dean and say to Dean, can you come across when you get a chance? Can you give me a hand? Buy a drink, and that's what was happening. It was, that kind of engagement with the people that were around me were helping me. And so that was really the first. So I'd gone from that team leader role, which I was proud as punch, Tolu. I was proud as punch. I'd got barely anything as a pay rise, but by gosh, was I proud as punch that I could ring my mum and dad and say, guess what? I've been promoted. It was worth it. It was worth coming to London for. And then, then I get a job managing a technology support desk. I'm going to be honest with you, I lasted about 18 months. I hated it.
Okay.
Because I was trying to learn the technology instead of playing to my strengths and being the leader. Right. So what I was doing was,
you did that?
Because we're brought up to focus on our weaknesses, aren't we? Even in our PDPs, what could you have done better? What went well? What could you have done better? And so I was always in the what can I do better? What can I do better space? And I think instead of focusing on what I could do really well, I was focusing on trying to develop my weaknesses. And there's a great author out there, Marcus Buckingham, and I read his book after that. Go Put Your Strengths to Work, the book was. No, the first one was Now Discover Your Strengths, and the second one was Go Put Your Strengths to Work. Two fantastic books, because that's what I've done. I'm really clear on what I'm good at, and I'm really clear on what I'm not good at, and I'm okay with that.
It's such an interesting, how do you balance that? Because I feel like sometimes there are some weaknesses that if they're not changed, they could ruin you, Or how do you balance that?
Well, give me an example of a weakness that might ruin you if you can't change it.
Let's say, for example, I'm really bad with timekeeping.
Okay. Don't do a job that requires you to be good at timekeeping.
Are there jobs that
there are? Really? You can go and work for yourself. But there's there are jobs. Definitely don't do jobs that don't play to your strengths. And I'm not saying don't focus on self-improvement. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there becomes a point, I think it's about when you're about 35, that your strengths are your strengths and your weaknesses are your weaknesses. And at that point, play to your strengths. Go and be the very best you can at the things that you're good at. And and what I would say is, if you're not very good at timekeeping, bring somebody into your team that can help you manage your time and do that for you, so that it's not something for you to worry about. So if you look even at my team at Stagecoach that I have here, we have a really rounded team, and it is because that team absolutely plays to my strengths and my weaknesses.
So your team at Stagecoach, was that a team that you inherited or a team that you were able to kind of pick for yourself?
It's a mix.
Okay.
It's a mix. And I think you need a mix, because what the outgoing UKMD might have been good at and might have been not good at is not necessarily what I might be good at and what I might not be good at. And I'm absolutely a fan of recruiting to your weaknesses, without a doubt. It's how you get to high performance really quickly.
What have you done in terms of being able to identify your weaknesses? How have you figured out what you're good at, what you're not good at?
Well, first of all, you can profile the heck out of yourself, can't you? And so I've done, you name it, I've done it. I'm really clear on, from a profile perspective, where my strengths and weaknesses are. But I also know what I like and what I don't like doing. So, you can be pretty sure, if I've got a list of 10 things to do and I rank them in order, you can pretty much guarantee that the bottom 5 things are things I don't like doing. And that's what I do. I look at the lists that I'm doing and think, what is it I don't want to do? What is it I can't do? What is it I don't like doing? Guess what? Sam really enjoys doing this stuff. I'll give it to Sam. What can I take off Sam? Well, I'll go and do his comm strategy for him, because Sam doesn't like writing communication strategies. And that's how it works. It's equitable, isn't it? There's something in it for Sam and there's something in it for me. And guess what? Sam's happy all the time and I'm happy all the time. Who wins? The 24,000.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So just to your point about the 24,000 people, you mentioned something really interesting off camera. You said that you're a volume leader, like you seek opportunities to lead large groups of people. I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Well, I do. And people always say, "Oh gosh, what do you want to lead all these people?" I love people. I love people. Doesn't matter who you are. I love people. I love interacting with the drivers at Stagecoach. I love interacting with our ops managers, and you learn so much. And it's really funny, because whenever we're looking for talent in this organization, I can guarantee you, Tolo, that in my 24,000 people, the talent's there somewhere. I just got to go looking for it and finding it. It's in there. If you look at a business like ours, when things need to get done, when you need to get really close to the customer, when you really need to know what's going on, your front line is where it is. And some people can be guilty of forgetting that. Some people can think you need the consultants to tell you that. You need the strategists to tell you that. You need the experts to tell you that. Well, in my world at Stagecoach, my expert gets on a bus and drives it around this country every day. They're watching the world, what's going on around them. They're hearing what customers say. They can see how customers feel. They're the people they're the people that I want to go to. So I get out and about with the team at Stagecoach, and I just, what's going on. When I go back to Sky, I remember working with the engineers, and again, group of people loved working with our Sky engineers. I remember one of them came up to me. It was one time we'd finished a team event we were in Leeds, actually. We'd finished a team event. He came up to me, Imran, and he said to me, "Can I talk to you about something?" So I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've had this idea." And I said, "I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to you. Should I tell my team manager?" I was like, sit down and tell me what. And he said, I work in London, and in London, 20% of my team are Muslim and 80% aren't. And it feels crazy to me, Carla, that at Christmas, we all take time off for Christmas. But when it's Ramadan and Eid, we don't take any time off. And actually, I've got a great solution for you that says, if we were allowed to take more time off at Ramadan and Eid, we'll work for you at Christmas. So all of a sudden, we can offer customers repairs and service calls over the Christmas period where we haven't been able to do that. And he said, and we'll do the same at Easter. So we can work Easter and we can work. Tolo, I wouldn't have got to that. I wouldn't have in my head gone, how do I square off this circle of providing great service? And what he said was, and I'll never forget it. He said, "Carla, not all of our customers look like you." Now, no diversity and inclusion specialist or consultancy told me that. A young engineer trying to do his job in London came and said to me, I'm exhausted when I fast at Ramadan. There's got to be a solution for this. And that's why I love people, because give people the opportunity. Anything's possible.
And is that the holiday swap? That's the holiday swap, right? That was started, I think. So I actually heard about that a few years back when all that was happening, because we tried to bring it into Sky Media. So it shows like the impact of even just that conversation is so wide reaching.
Absolutely. And, it isn't just, it doesn't just benefit the people. There were real tangible financial benefits to doing that. And that's what we say all the time about D&I. Wherever you really focus on it, Tolu, you can see financial benefits as well. It's common sense. It's common sense. Yeah. And that came from, Imran, one idea. Do you know what it did? It led to us doing all kinds of really cool things to make sure that we were the most inclusive team at Sky. So we did things like, we obviously started to celebrate every festival that we could. We had a great time celebrating. We brought people together. We created our employee networks at home service. We did crazy things like when the World Cup was on, if it was your team, you could finish early to go and watch your game, or you could, start late to watch your game. But all these kind of things that were all just around breeding this kind of culture of inclusion, this culture of belonging. And I'm really proud that we did that at Sky. I'm really proud that that's what we delivered. We've a journey to go on at Stagecoach, and we're on it here. And if the journey we got to would be where we were at Sky, I'd be really, really proud of the team.
How long has Stagecoach been? Because for me, it's just always been there as part of my life. So how old is Stagecoach? How long has it been around for?
40 years.
Wow.
40 years, and it was founded by Brian and his sister, Anne, who his father had been made redundant. Right. And they used his father's redundancy money to buy one bus that would shuttle people from Perth, where they lived, to Glasgow and back. Wow. And that's how Stagecoach started. It's now got 8,500 buses. Wow. It runs trams, coaches, buses, people. Now, Brian and Anne sold the business last year, so we've recently been acquired by DWS, who are an asset infrastructure fund. And so we're just going through that period of change now as we come under new ownership, having gone from being this huge family-owned business to now being owned by a private equity fund.
That's a very different culture. A very, very different culture. And obviously, at Sky, we went through being owned by the Murdochs and then being owned by Comcast. So do you think it's going to be a similar transition, or do you think it's going to be quite a different transition?
Look, I think they're always, especially because Sky had exactly that feel, right? So it wasn't a family business like Brian had at Stagecoach, but it was a family. I mean, there's not a person at Sky that wouldn't tell you they didn't feel part of the family. I think, and therefore it is a shock, isn't it? You get new owners and you get, things change. It's really important that you take people on the journey. That I always say the most important thing is the communications plan. It's what you're telling them. It's how you're telling them. It's who is telling them. It's how it's about being open and transparent with them. I'm definitely a believer in treat people like the adults that they are. Treat people like that. Don't be the custodian of all of the information. The more that people know, the more that people, it's just like us learning anything. The more you know, the more you're able to learn, the more that you're able to have an input, the better engaged you are, the better the outcome.
And that's how people can better solve problems, because you need information, you need understanding to really solve problems well.
You do.
How do you do emotional intelligence at scale? That's one of the things I find really interesting about your kind of seeking out volume is, as someone who leads with emotional intelligence, how do you make that applicable across the scale that you have in the organization?
So, we go full circle again, don't we? Because I have my equivalent of my 160 character text message. So I use the internal platform all the time to talk to people. You know, I'll interact with their posts on it. We use a product called Blink for our internal social media. I think, are you guys on Slack or are you on Yammer?
Yeah. So we've got both Slack and Yammer, I think.
Slack and Yammer, right? So it's really similar to Slack and Yammer. And you know what I do is I'm not just a producer of information. I also interact with lots of stuff that we get on there. That's how I think you get involved. You know, people will be raising money for a charity bike ride that they're doing. I'll make a point of sponsoring. You know, people will want to share, you know, stories of what their children have been doing. I'll celebrate that success. People post pictures of their holidays. You know, I'm interested, you know, and that's what I think. That's what makes a good leader. Be interested. Be interested.
I love that. I just don't understand how you have so much time to do all of these things.
Well, you know, because it goes back to, if you do something that you really love, it's not really work, is it? And that's what it feels like for me. I've been very privileged to work in organizations that have people like me in them.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as we close, what's the best advice you've been given on emotional intelligence or leadership?
The best advice that I would give is be yourself. Be yourself. You know, listen actively. You know, support. Be yourself. Take your whole self to work every day.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise, Tolu. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. And thank you guys for listening. And we will catch you guys on the next episode.